We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Just a quick reminder to our viewers that this is a live show and that we do take in your questions. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please send it in via the WhatsApp, the email address ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively give us a call here in the studio, 0203 515 0199, and inshallah me and the Sheikh will be able to discuss and answer your question. I'm your host tonight, Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Ma'ar. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you this evening?
Alhamdulillah, good.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Sheikhna, the first question I would like to discuss is in regards to Tahara. Now, when we purchase houses here in the West, not every house owner or the person selling it is a Muslim. So when we purchase a house as Muslims, let's say we purchase it off someone who is from non-Ahl Kitab and is najis. Can we purchase the house? What do we do in terms of all of the furniture that's there, the carpets, the taps in the kitchen and the working tops? Do we have to do like a deep cleanse to make this all tahir?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. We have this basis in the fiqh books which states that everything is tahir and pure until you are certain that it is najis and impure. كل شيء لك طاهر حتى تعلم أنه نجس بعينه. You have to be sure and certain that when you receive the keys of this house, that this house was definitely became najis. Let's say because they had pets, najis pets, like dogs for example, or any type of najasa, alcohol, wine, and so forth. You have to be certain that this area was najis. Otherwise, everything is tahir and clean. You can just come inside and even pray on that carpet you mentioned, sit on that furniture, let's say with wet bodies or clothes. There's no issue with it. You can't prove that this table or chair or this carpet is najis, so I have to wash everything in this house. This is wrong. The Sharia of Islam made things easy for the humanity. يريد بكم الله اليسر. Allah wants for you the ease. He wants to you be able to live in the aspects of ease and not the hardship. So it's important that we understand these ahkam and not to bring to ourselves problems and sometimes even disputes with a member of the family, for example, who doesn't want to be, to be done. Let's say you don't want to wash the whole house, for example. So let's take things easy and without complication, because Islam came to bring a happy life for us in this world. And of course, the hereafter is the fate, of course, inshallah.
That's excellent. Sheikhna, when it comes to divorce here in the West, a couple could get divorced according to the local government or the council or local governing bodies. And what if we have a couple who get divorced according to European or Western governments, but they continue to live together and they stay together, and they only acknowledge or they will only accept divorce when they have a Sharia divorce. Now, the question here is, can they continue to live together? Does the Sharia law actually acknowledge and accept the Western courts of divorce and say that no, they've had a Western divorce, therefore these two can't be together anymore? Or do they have to have a Sharia divorce for them to actually go their separate ways and so forth?
The divorce which is performed in the let's say, Western courts in overall, does not represent the actual and Shari'i divorce. The Shari'i divorce must be done through two just adilain, and in the proper manner that you say, you know, for example, this wife is taliq and so forth, these the wordings. You cannot rely on the, let's say, the current legislation or the Western laws and so forth to actually have the Shari'i divorce. You must follow the Shari'i procedures that you go to, for example, to a Maulana or to the Imam of your Husseini or center or the mosque and ask them to implement the divorce in the Shari'i way, and they will do it, of course. And they can issue, let's say, a certificate or some kind of acknowledgement that, according to us as a registered center in this country, these two individuals are now divorced. And then you can go to the courts and tell them that we are now separated, and you can both of you live separately. But in anyhow, you must follow the Shari'i rules in terms of the divorce and even the marriage as well.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Got a question coming from one of the viewers, Sheikhna. Can I touch or kiss my fiance according to His Eminence Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani Hafidhullah?
The Sayyid is clear, and even other Maraja as well, that you cannot have any contacts with your
Physical
fiancé
contact.
except in the matter of through a contract marriage,
Okay.
the nikah contract. You must set at least a short-term nikah contract or long-term to be able to have this contact, this على كل حال halal contact. Otherwise, it's going to be haram relationship. You can't have such a relationship, even if you are intending and you have the intention, the good intention from both sides to get married. You must go through this process of the aqd, even as I've said, short-term aqd, and then you can transfer it to the long-term aqd and contract. So it has to be through a proper nikah contract.
Awesome. Inshallah, we can have an episode on that to clarify and everything. Sheikhna, when it comes to wudu, now sometimes we do have blemishes, we have marks, burns, scabs, and so forth. With burns and scabs, are these considered to be barriers, splints, and so forth when it comes to doing wudu? His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Bashir al-Najafi, he comments on this. What does he say?
Well, His Eminence mentions that if the water is harmful in reaching the skin, then of course you can apply some kind of bandage or plaster and do the wudu over this burnt area or wounded area that the water is harmful to reach. So of course you can do what is known as wudu al-jabiri, where you do the wudu over the plaster
bandage,
or
okay.
bandage and so forth.
I see. I think that goes for the same with casts as well. If you've broken your arm, unfortunately, then you can, lead the water over, do the wudu over the cast and so forth. Sticking with the wudu, Sheikhna, some of our brothers and sisters as well have tattoos. Now, according to His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Wahid Khurasani, does the tattoo create a barrier? Does it stop you from performing your wudu?
Ayatollah Khurasani mentions that the tattoo, if there was an obstacle, if it was made from a material that is obstacle, a barrier against the wudu, the water of the wudu, then it's not allowed. The one should remove this this tattoo, even if it's difficult. Even if you have to pay money for removing this tattoo, which is causing barrier, must be removed. And this applies also to the paint. Any other, for example, glue, super glue, for example, any other barriers to the skin while performing the wudu and the ghusl, these must be removed before the wudu and ghusl, otherwise the ghusl and wudu are batil and void. So you must remove them and be able to perform the salah in the correct way. He also mentions that it is a form of makeup for the woman if she puts this on her face, for example.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Then if it's a makeup or a form of makeup, then she must not reveal it to the non-mahram. She must cover it with a niqab or a burqa because it's some kind of makeup. But in overall, it seems to be that today's tattoos are somehow pierced through the skin.
It's under the skin.
It's under the skin, so there should be no issue with it. But the Shaykh was just assuming that if it was the type of barrier or some kind of obstacle, then
there are some what we call temporary tattoos. I don't know if you remember, Sheikhna, back in my day when I was a young kid, would have these sweets would look like long white sticks, and you'd get these so-called tattoos which you put water on, and you know, you can have them on your arms, on your hands, and so forth. And obviously that did create a barrier, so that would not be allowed. Sheikhna, we've got another question coming in from one of our viewers. What are the limits of urgent necessity in religion, and what is the meaning of avoiding awkwardness or complication in religion?
In overall, the urgent necessity is when somebody is compelled to do something out of necessity. You have no choice. You must do this, otherwise you can't do it. So the Sharia comes and says, okay, if you can't handle it, then do your best. So for example, if I can't go to sujood and prostrate fully, the Sharia would say, do as much as you can, attempt to go to the sujood or the ruku'. I can't bend fully, 90 degrees. I can do only 30 degrees, 40 degrees. As much as you can, you do the ruku' as best as you can. So that's the urgent necessity in terms of practicing these wajib acts in salah and other aspects of the Sharia. And of course, the one should basically refer back to the ahkam to see, is his salah in this way correct or not correct? For example, to ask the experts and the fuqaha in this field that how can I pray in this situation, for example. So best thing is to ask the experts in this field to understand when to apply the urgent necessity in fiqh.
Sheikhna, tax, as we know, is something that is, a system that has been put financially all over the world. Even in Islam, we have our version of tax. Now, if a country has a so-called Muslim government in power, are they allowed to actually implement Western tax systems upon the people?
You see, the accepted Islamic government is a government that applies the Ahkamullah Azza wa Jal on earth, which pleases its leaders in Islam, Muhammad Salamullah alayhim. It is not permissible for such government, the Muslim government or Islamic government, to levy or set taxes other than the khumus, zakat, jizya, and kharaj. We have 4 types of khumus in Islam, or tax in Islam. 4 types of taxations. Other than that, you're not allowed to, charge people with tax in which ma anzalallah bihi min sultan. Allah didn't reveal it in His holy book, or the Ahlul Bayt in their narrations. So, such as the VAT, for example, or other taxes,
Custom
for example.
Tax.
It never existed in Islam, such taxes.
Income tax.
Incomes, exactly. Yeah. Let's be honest and frank about these issues. That these taxes destroyed people's lives gradually, making them poor, making them living, in terms of the standard of living going down, and so forth. People getting more poor, and so forth, due to the expensive life in these particular countries, where the taxes are so high, they can't work and gain more money to at least buy a house. Maybe just a 1-bedroom house. They can't buy it because the taxes are so high, interest and the riba is so high, and so forth. So the correct taxes are these ones. And of course, when you read Nahj al-Balagha by Imam Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi, you see that he advises the one who goes and collects the zakat and the tax in Islamic way, that he doesn't forces him to go on and force them to pay the zakat.
Just ask for it.
Ask me if they have, otherwise you go back. So sadly today, even in the Muslim countries where you are forced to pay the taxes in anyhow, you have to pay, otherwise you're going to go to the jail or maybe punished in other forms. So the Muslim governments should go back and implement, we don't want to say 100% like the Ma'soom's rule. Nobody expects from a non-Ma'soom, non-infallible, to rule like infallible, of course. But at least we try to reach that level of practicing Islam and practicing the Islamic rule according to the Quran and the Sunnah and the Hadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. At least we try to implement and not to imitate or copy the East and the West. When we have our own constitution and rules and regulations, we don't need to bring from the East and the West rules and regulations and to copy them, unless if, God forbid, these countries follow the West in somehow.
Shaykhna, on what categories does usury fall?
We have two types of usury. Is the transactional usury and transactions, where you see the riba is working there, and in the loan, when someone takes out loan, the loan usury, where you pay interest on your loan, when you pay back the loan. These are two types.
Excellent. We're going to go to a short break now. Join us after the break as we continue our discussion here on Ahkam. Join us after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Just a quick reminder to all our viewers that this is a live show. We do take in your questions. So if you have any question you'd like to ask, please send it in via the WhatsApp, the email address. Alternatively, give us a call here in the studio, and inshallah, me and the Sheikh will be able to answer your questions. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
Speaking of WhatsApp and email and so forth, we've got another question in from one of the viewers. Can you give an example for the transactions that involve usury?
Well, the example of the transactional usury is when somebody is selling or giving to you, let's say, 3 kilograms of wheat in exchange of 4 kilograms of wheat, but one is good quality, one is poor quality. And this 1 kilogram extra is where the riba plays the role of the usury of riba. So this transaction is haram, is riba, because you're giving extra in exchange. There's no money involved, no coins, no notes. It's just that I'm giving you a bag of 3 kilograms of good quality of wheat in exchange of 4 kilograms of normal or poor quality of wheat.
Okay.
And you're giving me extra kilo because of the difference, but in weight, in exchange. That becomes haram. Of course, when we go back to the Holy Quran, we see there's a strong word of Allah Azza wa Jal in this holy verse about those who deal with usury and riba. Surah number 2, ayat 278, 279.
Surah Baqarah.
Allah states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu taqullah wa dharu ma baqiya min al-riba in kuntum mu'minin. O you who believe, fear God and forgo what remains of usury if you are believers. Forgo, leave it. Then he says in the next ayah, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, if you do not do, what happens? فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then take notice of a war by God and His Messenger. War. Imagine the one who deals with usury and takes riba from people and gives riba and so forth. فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. It's a serious matter. It's like waging war. So riba is so rejected and refused in the Sharia that has a great means of, as you know, in terms of the side effects on the economy and the people, as I've said, causes poverty and many other results in which one should stay away. Of course, we have to deal with what is now available, as I've said, when it comes to the mortgage, when it comes to taking out loan from non-Muslim banks. These are different issues. You have to, live in the situation. You have no choice. But as a riba, as a Muslim country, for example, who is dealing with riba, or as a mu'mineen, with the believers, that's the issue is raised when we start to deal with the riba as Muslims. So things have to be measured in the right way when it comes to the Shari'i masail.
Shana, what about selling an item in exchange for an excess in quantity of the same product but sold in measurements or counted?
You see, there's no issue in terms of selling or buying materials which are measured in meters or feet or yards, such as the carpets or the rugs. So I can sell to you a 2 by 3 meter Persian rug in exchange of 3 by 3 Chinese rug or Turkish rug, because the Persian are the best rugs.
Yes.
So I'm actually
Giving you good
selling it shorter in terms of measurement to the bigger one. So that's fine in terms of the measurements. Likewise, if I sell to you, for example, 10 organic eggs in return of 12 non-organic eggs, that should be fine, because these are counted.
Yes.
So we have to be careful when it comes to weighting things and exchanging things. Even for the jewelry shop, when you want to exchange your, let's say, wives or spouses or whoever's golden ring, make sure that you don't do exchange, an exchange of another or brand new golden ring. Make sure that you sell it first, you get the money, and then you go and later on and buy the new ring or necklace. Don't exchange the gold and silver and so forth. We have to be careful in these.
Interesting. Shana, a question from one of our viewers. If the building that is assigned as waqf is in ruins, does it lose its waqf status? That's a very good question, actually.
No, it doesn't lose its status. It remains as waqf. It remains as a mosque, for example. Even if it was damaged due to the war or the weather or any other causes, you have to rebuild it again and basically use that place as a public, let's say, worship place. Or according to the waqf, you cannot take over and say, well, now it's been damaged, I can build, let's say, shops or flats, and that's it.
So you're saying that it needs to be restored, but it has to have the same use?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Shaykhna, what is the reason behind the daily prayers?
You see, the daily prayers in overall, number one, it makes us to remember Allah Azza wa Jal from the morning till the night. To be in the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. To say every day in each salah, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We believe in you and we worship you only you, Allah Azza wa Jal. Not my wealth, not my shop. Because some people, they tend to worship their wealth, their shop, their business, their partners sometimes, their spouse sometimes. So no, the only individual I worship is Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah and no one else. لا شريك له. I don't put sharik or partner with Allah Azza wa Jal. Also, it's a form of purification. We have a hadith which says that, imagine that you have a stream outside your home and you wash 5 times in that stream. Would any dirt remains on your body? No.
You'd be spotless.
Imagine that if somebody, I think there are some people who take shower every morning, every day. There would be no smell or any dirt on their body because they have, constant everyday shower in the morning. Likewise, the salah would purify this individual who goes and prays every day in 3 sessions, 5 times a day. We understand from the Khutbah al-Fadakiyah by Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, when she went in the mosque and spoke against the new rules and the new leader. She mentioned the reason for some of the Sharia rules, such as Hajj, such as Salah, such as fasting. So she says, Salamullah alayhi, with regard to the Salah, فَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ الصَّلَاةَ. Then she said, تَنْزِيهًا لَكُمْ عَنِ الْكِبْرِ. The Salah, the daily prayers, is prescribed to keep you away from pride, away from arrogance. The salah is where you become humble, humiliated in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, with tawadu', with dhillah, to stand and to say Allahu Akbar. Nothing is greater than Allah Azza wa Jal. He is the greatest, He is the greater. So it is there where we stand and talk to Allah Azza wa Jal. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. We thank Allah Azza wa Jal. Praise be to Allah Azza wa Jal. The world of the worlds, not the alam, dunya, alameen, all the worlds. Akhirah, dunya, and so forth.
MashaAllah. Shaykh, a question in from one of our viewers. What should be our position towards hadiths and narrations reported in our sources, given that we are not experts to identify the hadith's authenticity or otherwise in terms of sanad and content?
You see, when it comes to the hadith with regard to the ahkam, the halal and the haram, the wajib, and so forth, there must be some kind of scrutiny and in-deep research about the chain of the narrators, the context, and so forth. Because the faqih, the alim, wants to issue a fatwa. He must make sure that this hadith is accurate, is correct, there's no issue with it, is authentic, and so forth. That's why we see there are differences in some of the ahkam. That some say this is najis, some say this is tahir.
Yes.
This is haram, this is not haram, for example. There are some differences in terms of the ahkam because of these ahadith, that they go into deep research about the authenticity of these ahadith to be able to extract the hukum of shari'i from these ahadith. So that's one of the reasons that they would do such a intense research. But when it comes to the ahadith which talk about the akhlaq, morals, ethics, etiquettes, ziyarah, dua, mustahab, salah, and so forth, you don't need to go and search the chain of the narrators and find out who narrated this hadith about this dua or this salah, mustahab, and so forth. You can just take it. Because we have other hadith which says that if some of these, if a hadith came with regard to the mustahabbat, let's say that it's mustahab to pray 2 rak'ah on every Friday Eve, for example. It's mustahab to recite this dua on this day. And you just followed this hadith and you basically performed it, you'll get the thawab. Even if you discover later that it wasn't mentioned at all. It just came in the books of the hadith, but you practiced it because it was mentioned in the books of hadith from the Ma'asum alayhi salam, but because it wasn't there, then you haven't really, you couldn't actually, you just practiced it basically. So according to the, we have a rule or basis called at-tasamuh fi adillat sunan. The translation is tolerance in the proofs of hadith. To be tolerant, to be ease. Take the hadith ease in terms of the hadith with regard to the sunan, adab, ethics, and so forth. You are allowed to take them without going into
so it's more of a relaxed approach.
Deep research.
I see.
Exactly.
MashaAllah. Sheikh, we have another question, I believe, from one of our viewers, MashaAllah. What is the ruling with drying one's body parts of wudu by a towel? So I'm assuming this is to do with once you've performed the wudu, should you dry the water or should you keep the water on your face or your hands and arms and so forth?
Well, it is permissible, but it is makruh. We have a hadith in Kitab Man La Yahdharuhu al-Faqih.
Yes, Sheikh Saduqa.
From Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam, he states with this regard that Man tawadda'a, the one who performed the wudu, وَتَمَنْدَلَ means he used a towel to dry his the body parts of the wudu. كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَهُ حَسَنَةً, Allah would write for him only one hasana. One hasana for this act. وَمَنْ تَوَضَّأَ وَلَمْ يَتَمَنْدَلْ, so the one who performs the wudu but he doesn't wipe or dries the body parts of the wudu with the towel, وَلَمْ يَتَمَنْدَلْ حَتَّى يَجِفَّ وُضُوءَهُ, until his wudu naturally dries. كتب الله له 30 حسنة, 30 حسنة. Where is one hasana? Where is 30 hasana? So the istihbab is to keep the body parts of the wudu wet until they get dry naturally by itself.
I see. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Shaykhna, my next question is in regards to Fatimiyya. Now, Fatimiyya has the second narration we've just done a couple of weeks, or last week, and we are approaching the third narration, which is one of the most popular ones. In regards to Fatimiyya, what is your opinion in regards to Fatima Zahra salamu alayha and the whole event of Fatimiyya, you know, the attack on the door, the crushing of the ribs, the miscarrying of Muhsin? Salamu alayhi.
Well, the narrations are very frequent and mutawatir. You know, we don't have to. I've heard this issue from one of the ulama that, like Ashura, it's been well known. It's not something hidden.
Mm-hmm.
It's an incident in which was recorded in the Shia books and the non-Shia books. I mentioned last few episodes that, for example, the Sunni alim with the name of, in his book, I think Ibn Qutaybah, Al-Imam wa Siyasa, and Musannaf ibn Shaybah and others mentioned the attack on the door of Fatima alayhi salam. And the Shia books, you know, such as Kitab Sulaym ibn Qais, one of the very first books in Islam, in the Shia literature, which was produced, Kitab Sulaym ibn Qais, who went himself to Medina and reported after the incident, asking Salman, asking Abu Dhar and others, asking the Imam alayhi salam about the incident of the attack. Also, Kitab al-Ghadir by Alam Amini mentions in detail with the references of non-Shia books. And The Nights of Peshawar by Allama Musawi al-Shirazi. He also mentions the attack and he argues with the non-Shia scholars with this regard. So, alhamdulillah, we are confident, we are certain, we are sure that this incident took place, and it is sad to hear that from here and there that some people raise the doubt from the same school followers. That's very sad.
Indeed. Thank you, Shaykhna, for your time and for your efforts, and thank you to all the viewers for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. Inshallah, we'll be back next week with a new episode. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please do not hesitate to get in touch. We don't need to know your name. We don't need to know, where you're asking from or anything like that. Just give us your question. WhatsApp, email, give us a call. And inshallah, we'll do our best to get your answers. Inshallah, we'll see you in the next episode of Ahkam SOS. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.